Hey, and welcome back to the Fully Booked Photographer podcast. And this week we're back to 3. So we have Janine, Jonathan, and myself here. And this week we're talking about your client is not the enemy. You might be asking yourself, that's a funny subject.
Talking about Heron and Froze.
But we see evidence of this. We see evidence of this all the time, like in terms of comments we see on Facebook and in forums, and when we see it, we go, what is that about? So we being the people we are, we also like, what's driving that? Why is that? But I think first of all, we should start to talk about some of the comments we see, and then we'll try and deep dive into what might be driving that and sharing some examples as to, Janine might share an example as to, maybe a shifted mindset she's had over the years and maybe an example of it. And then we deep dive into, well, now that we know that we shouldn't do that, what should we do? So Jonathan, just you have a document that we've put together, just that we've detailed some of the quotes we see. Do you want to just read us some of them? And then we can have a conversation.
One of the things that we see time and time again is this comment that my clients don't value my artwork, or I don't get any leads who value photography. There are two comments that are consistent across groups, across countries, and they're interesting.
But is that not true? Because people don't value photography, and people don't value. Read those ones to us again.
Sure. So the first one is my clients don't value my artwork.
Okay, but they don't. They don't value your artwork if you're wearing the lens of, it's a merit qualifying image, and it's an amazing photograph, and it passes all the tests of the art and science of photography, because that's not what clients value, right?
What do you think, Janine?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it is. So many people go into this business because they were photographers first. Very few go in as business people first and learn photography. There are a few, and those people are typically very successful. But when you come in at it first from the love of photography and the love of art and the love of photographing people, because we are talking mainly with portrait photographers, you have this sense of, and you work so hard to perfect your artwork, and you work so hard to create that perfect image. And so when people call and they don't want to pay you what everybody has told you you're worth, what you think you're worth, then automatically you're thinking to yourself, well, what's wrong with them? Why don't they value what I do? It must be the quality of the lead. It must be where they're from, where they live, a whole myriad of things. And they just must not understand, or they, it must be all those other cheap photographers out there devaluing what it is that I do. And so it's this mindset that photographers get into because all they care about and all they love, and and I've fallen into this too. So I'm speaking to myself. That's what we've been trained to do. We've been trained that our photography is what will make you, build it and they will come. You perfect your artwork, you improve your craft, you create the most beautiful portrait, and people will pay for it. And people will come, and people will flock, and people will value it, and people will pay for it, and keep raising your prices because you're worth it. And it's like that hair commercial, because you're worth it. And that's what photographers, it's been ingrained into us. Just raise those prices, because the higher priced you are, people will value it and people will pay for it. And they're not valuing you because you're too cheap.
There's a great lesson there as well. And when you mentioned the hair thing, L'Oreal, because you're worth it, L'Oreal aren't talking about them. They're talking about their clients. They're telling their clients they're worth it. So yes. L'Oreal get marketing. L'Oreal know what business is.
Right? They're talking to their client. Exactly. And we take it as because we're worth it. We're worth the price that we charge. Our artwork is so amazing that people should pay for it. And so when they question, automatically, it's them. There's something wrong with them. And we see it, like Jonathan said, in so many forums, so many Facebook groups, within our own group as well. It's the first thing people go to. Well, people don't value what I do. It must be Facebook. It must be this. It must be the event I was at. People just don't value, people aren't, and then blame automatically goes to the lead or the client.
And that's when the client becomes the enemy, right?
Yes. It is when the client becomes the enemy, and it becomes an us versus them mentality.
And it's crazy to think, because, you know, you talk to some photographers as well, like, and if they were treated by other companies how they like talk about some of their clients, they'd lose the plot and say it's the worst company in the world to deal with. Like, it's a really weird kind of mindset that, and like you said, Ronan, it's nobody's fault. And like Janine said, it's just over the years, it's what has developed, I guess, as a culture in the industry. And the funny thing is, like, we've worked with so many clients who started off there. They had this, you know, I don't want to use the word like ego, but they had this belief about them and their art. And when they made that tough mental transition into making their business client focused and focusing on making their client the hero and understanding that it's not about their artwork, that it's about solving problems or helping their clients achieve desires, and they focused on the emotional value they were creating for their clients, things like their average sales like doubled and tripled from like $1,500, $2,000 to $4,000, $6,000, you know? And that's not because their clients value their artwork. It's because their clients value the emotional problem that the artwork is solving for them. And it's mind-boggling. Like, I know it's difficult, because when you have a belief about something, any human, about anything, it's tough to overcome that, or to be open-minded about, well, I might actually be wrong, because it hurts. It hurts us all. You know, it doesn't matter what industry we're in. But it's like, you see it in the groups as well, like Janine was talking about. I can't believe you sold that artwork for that price. What do you mean? The client bought it because they saw the value in that artwork. But the photographers are talking about, they can't believe that a piece of artwork that wasn't perfect was sold for such a price. That's not what it's about. Sorry, getting animated.
That's okay. It's interesting too, because they do, not only do they make the client the enemy, but sometimes make the other photographers the enemy too. It's interesting.
So we get this, and you said something very important there, Jonathan, is that, you know, that it's hard to change your mindset sometimes, and it's hard to consider other things. And, you know, we didn't always think about this way either. But when you come back to any business, like whether it's photography or anything else, we're there to solve problems. Like you read Business 101, right? It's about who's the ideal client you can solve a problem for. And photography is no different. But I think I'm trying to figure out where this comes from, right? And I'm trying to figure out what's driving it. And I think there's a whole load of drivers. I actually don't believe that anybody sat down and strategically thought this through and said, we're going to make sure that the photography industry is built around a belief that photographers believe it's all about the art and science of the photography and not the problem it solves for the client. I don't believe that happened.
I don't believe it either.
I haven't been around long enough to do that. I think it's evolved for some reason. And Janine, you mentioned something a little earlier, you know, about that most photographers come in to creating a business out of a love of creating great photographs, creating great art. Do you think that's the reason why maybe it evolved, that, you know, you have photographers meeting photographers, organizing events for photographers who are all into the art and science of photography? So the whole idea of print competition, and that's where the value is, and the quality of the image sort of evolved over decades and decades and decades and decades. And there was nobody sort of there going, stop It's not about that. Stop. Yes, we can do all that quality of the artwork and photography. And we're not saying it's not important, but we're just saying that you pin your everything on that is what's wrong. But do you think that there was nobody there because everyone was just engrossed with the same desires and beliefs, that there was nobody there just saying, hold on, let's just look at this from another perspective and consider it. And therefore this whole business around print competition and image competition that reinforces that sort of built up over time. And that's what the photographers wanted. So you're supposed to give your clients what they want, right? So if you're an association and that's what your clients want, well then, of course, you're going to supply them what they want. But what do they need? And there was nobody saying there, yeah, okay, we understand what they want and we can do that, but we also need to supply them what they need. Is that what's happened or what has happened? Like, because I'm not around, like yes, I've been involved as a vendor in the photography industry for decades, right, at different times, but I haven't been involved at looking underneath the bonnet of the industry until I started to coach and mentor photographers and speak and stuff like that. That's when I really got to truly understand what was going on in their minds and their brains, and just seeing what was happening and the nuances of how everything is fitting together, and being the person who always asks why and the strategist, and as Gary Box calls me, the tall provocateur. You know, I sort of said, hold on a second. What have I missed? Janine, what have I missed?
You're funny. So it's interesting. I think it's a lot of what you said, but I also think I've thought about this too. And I think it goes back a ways, honestly. I think in the beginning, not in the very beginning, you know, when people had to stand like this and they couldn't smile, exposing a photograph took 20 minutes. But up until, I would say, even the 90s, there was very few professional photographers in any town because the cost to entry and to learn the skill and everything was very difficult. It was very expensive. Cameras were expensive. Film was expensive. There weren't a lot of options in your town. I mean, I grew up, my parents, there was either like Olin Mills and Sears, like you had the big box stores, or you had like 2 professional photographers in your town. And that was it, right? And so they were able, for whatever reason, they focused on, we're just not Sears or Olin Mills. That's all they had to do. They didn't have to, so they were able to focus on their art, and the better photographer won the clients in the town. And as technology changed, and as 35 millimeter became more acceptable, and then digital comes on the market, the cost to enter the business got lower and lower and lower. And you started seeing this explosion of photographers in cities, towns. And now instead of having your choice of 2, you have your choice of like 1,000. And so the associations, of course, you know, they're very excited because now they have all these, they used to have, 2 members per city. Now they have like, they have the possibility of like 1,000 people joining an association. And how do you educate them? Well, you need to educate them on the art, because they were coming in there is no formal training anymore. There wasn't people going to photography school and apprenticing under another photographer for 10 years before opening their doors. It was, I got a camera, I'm going to be a photographer. People tell me I take pretty pictures, I'm going to be a photographer. So the associations now had to figure out how to quickly train all these people, right? And get them in, and we'll train you and we'll make you a professional, and join our association, become a professional, learn the art. And once you do that, now you can become a professional and charge, and people will come. So I think it kind of started there and worked its way into what it's become, because they had to, because the industry got influxed so fast with so many people that didn't know a thing about photography, but thought they were photographers. They had to focus on the art of photography. They had to, because people didn't know how to take a picture, and they were calling themselves professional photographers. And so, I think but that never would have happened before. Before, people trained, they worked under photographers. It was like most other fields where you apprenticed and you went to school or whatever the case may be. But then once like I said, so I think it started there, and the focus became so heavy on learning the art because so many people didn't know the art. And then it progressed, and they never got out of that. They never switched until recently to how to actually run the business and how to think about the client and what does the client need and what does the client want. It's always been about how to make a better picture, because you need to learn this because you guys aren't taking good photographs. And so it's been an interesting shift to watch in the industry over time, because I came in right at the beginning of that. Like I came into the industry right in 2000, and I did work for another photographer for 4 or 5 years before I went out on my own. And it was still shooting medium format film. And so but it was at the very tail end. And I came in right as people were starting to come in without having done that. And so I haven't seen it. Some of our friends like Gary and those guys who have been in it since the late 80s, early 90s and saw the full transformation of it. But I did get to see the very beginning of it. And so it has been interesting. But I think you're right. It's not something intentional. It was out of need. Hey, we got to train all these people that are coming into the industry with just a camera and no training. And instead of really thinking about what that would end up doing in the long run, it was based out of the need of the associations and training of this influx of photographers. And now it's become this. We've empowered these photographers so much into valuing their artwork that no one's thinking about the client and what the client needs and wants. And so photographers will create this incredible offer or create like this thing that they want to photograph and sell, and no one wants to buy it. Well, maybe because they don't need it or they don't want it, and you haven't thought about what the client actually wants and needs. And because of that, you've been told as a photographer, if you improve your art, people will pay for it. And then when people aren't willing to pay for it, now it must be their problem, not yours.
I think it goes deeper than that, just because I think there's also a feeling of there's a lack of belief on the photographer's part and a lack of confidence, because they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they can, help people with their photography. So they focus on trying to create the most amazing artwork from an art and science perspective and a technical standpoint, because they believe that will allow them to justify what they're selling. They don't believe in themselves. I don't know if
it's a lack of belief or if it's just no one's actually told them that your photography can change someone's life.
Maybe.
I just don't know if people have actually been told that, or if they've never actually witnessed it happen. And so they never come across that belief. I think if a photographer actually witnessed their photography changing someone's life, or if they were told in a workshop, like if they were able to experience this, that your photography can change somebody, like you said, Jonathan, and then get that belief. I just don't think it's ever talked about. I think Ronin talks about it. I think sometimes we talk about it, but I think in an industry as a whole, the whole idea of making a difference in people's lives with your photography is not talked about a lot. It's the only thing that is talked about is the immortalization or the heirloom or create this for generations to come, right? But no one talks about what it's doing for you now, which is so important because so many people can't visualize the future, right? Which is why we have a problem with the environment, because people can't think about generations to come and what we're doing to impact that. They think about the now.
And don't value the future.
They don't value the future.
So if your whole angle is about being a great artist and creating legacy portraits for the future, it's not because of your legacy portrait. It's just the value is misplaced because your messaging is wrong to your client. That's not the problem your client wants to solve. There'll be a percentage, right, a small percentage, but they're a tiny percentage. People want instant gratification. They want it today, and they want it tomorrow, even less than they want it today. And like nobody waits for anything. Like Amazon are working on how can we get people their order in 3 hours?
Yeah.
Like that's what they're working on.
And even if you think around about the ideal client for what you just spoke about, like that client on Maslow's hierarchy of needs has everything fulfilled. They're at the self-actualization stage. They don't need to worry about money or health or family or shelter or providing. They have it all. And they're at that self-actualization point that they need something in their life. And like those people are rare.
They are rare.
But it's funny. It's funny because, Janine, I spend too much time my subconscious spends too much time analyzing this problem for the last number of years. And I love ancient programs, Roman times and, Venetian times and all these times. And I watch all these old programs. And I was watching one, I can't remember the artist. I don't think it was Michelangelo, it was someone else. But anyway, at the time, there was the bankers in Venice, right? So this is prior to photography, right? So there's the bankers in Venice, and they were all family banking.
The Medicis.
I think.
The Medicis.
The Medicis, that's it. The Medicis, that's the one. And, they would sponsor a great artist to come in and create artwork of the key family members, right? But if you actually look at what those artists did, they didn't just turn up and don't know the person and start creating the artwork. They spend so much time with their subjects for months and months and months before they ever lifted a paintbrush to understand what was the essence of this person. What does this person actually want this artwork to say about them? What do they want this, what problem is this artwork going to solve for them? And they spent months and months before they ever lifted anything, and then they'd sketch stuff and they'd talk to the client about it before they painted. But it wasn't about their art. It was about what that art meant to those people, and is it solving the problem that they hired them to do? And we can't spend months and months and months with our clients, right? But even they got it. Like the great artists that we go, wow, look at that artwork today. Got this. But somewhere on this transition into photography, like you've talked about, and I think you're bang on and probably what you do, because that makes perfect sense. It would have made sense at the time. But like all human stuff, we always overcompensate on either side of something. That's why the stock market does this. It goes up eventually, but it does it with peaks and valleys because we overcompensate with everything. And maybe that's what the industry overcompensated, and it thought that to show value for photography, we need to teach all these people how to take great photographs. We talk about this all the time in the Funny Book Photographer. To balance on a stool, you need 4 legs. And knowledge through training is just 1 leg, and it's hard to balance on a 1-legged stool. You need that support through mentorship, you need that accountability through coaching, and you need that recognition through community. You need those 4 legs intertwined in a balanced strategy, all connected to deliver that balance. And if you look at the art and science of photography, Janine, we have all that, don't we? Because we've got our training programs in the art and science of photography. We have our mentorship programs. We have our degrees, to bring accountability and get your, and we have our competition for recognition among our peers. So we have all those 4 legs for the art and science of photography. I'm not just talking about one country. I'm talking about every country I go to.
Right.
We seem to have those 4 legs there. But I haven't yet seen in any country the 4 legs of the stool for the business of photography.
No, you're right. It's very true. And there are, it's interesting because I think our associations realized that they needed to start teaching photographers business, not just art. But teaching business isn't just teaching business. It's not just facts and figures. There's everything that goes along with it. And I think that's what we're finding now, like teaching about the customer and teaching about who you're serving and teaching about what it is that those people need and want. That's part of business too.
And it takes time. Like I had a one-on-one mentor session with one of our members yesterday, and like they were talking about the fact that when they first came in, they were going, what are they talking about? But let's listen and let's adapt and let's try some of it, right? And let's try some of it and implement it. But they were saying like it took them time. It took them time to realize that it is about the client and it is about how I use the art and science of photography to solve a problem for a client. But it is a big transition. As Jonathan said at the very beginning, we're not saying we're right. We're just saying we've seen, it's our analysis of the market. It's our analysis of what we see. It's our analysis of seeing when people do make the shift and the difference it makes. And as Jonathan talked about, the value that people invest in, because they're looking for you to solve the problem today, tomorrow, and forever. And we're not saying that forever is not important, but today and tomorrow is more important. But it's interesting.
Well, to give you an example, so just here's some interesting insights. So the other night we had a call with one of our concierge clients who we ran ads for, and just to give you an idea of the type of conversation. So we're planning out a campaign for wizard themed sessions, and the conversation was about, once we generate the lead and we have those conversations with the potential clients, the conversation was around, so what questions am I going to ask this person to see if they're a good fit? And it was all about asking reasons like why they actually wanted a session as a top level kind of more superficial question, and then deep diving into, well, what does the wizarding world actually do for your child? How does it make your child feel? And it sparked things like, well, confidence, or overcoming adversity. That I want to give my child the belief that no matter what happens to them in life, they can be just like this character, an ordinary character, and actually overcome adversity. So it's all about, the photography is about giving the child confidence and that belief and constant reminder that no matter what happens to them in life, they can overcome any obstacles that are thrown at them. And that's the type of planning that's gone into the emotion for the photography. It's nothing about, oh, look at these cool images of the kid dressed up in a wizard costume. It's about, what are those images going to do for my child? And sometimes your clients don't even know that. You have to ask the right questions and dive deep. And it was the same thing when it was like the Think Pink. It was talking about, it was quickly discovered that mother and daughter, and that their special relationship together, and it was focus on empowerment. And, those portraits were a reminder of their relationship together and what that relationship meant for them. And, that idea that they can be whatever they want to be. And that's the type of conversation that when you fully get this and the difference you make, that you focus on, because it's like, no, it's not just about taking cool photographs or, a family portrait and to hang on my wall, because I have so many visitors who want to come and see this amazing family portrait. Anyway, that's another topic. But that's the level of depth that it's about. That's why clients buy and invest thousands of dollars on sessions, is because it's about what those photographs are doing for the person in them and the buyer. And that's just some insight as to the type of discussion,
It's interesting you bring up the Barbie and Mattel, because look at the transformation they made in mindset. So I think our industry can do it too. I mean, that doll for so long represented this unrealistic ideal of a woman, right? And so for so long, people hated Barbie because although you might have played with them as a child, like all of a sudden it became this unrealistic expectation of what it means to be a woman. And Mattel knew that this wasn't what their girls wanted anymore. And they changed. And now Barbie symbolizes empowerment, and you can be anything you want to be. And they totally changed their marketing message because they listened to what their clients wanted and what was needed in the market. We no longer needed that 70s ideal of what the perfect woman was. No one needs that anymore. We want to be whatever we want to be. We want to be empowered. And so Mattel listened, and it's amazing. Actually, that would be such an interesting, I would love to hear people deep dive into what went into that decision making for them to change. But obviously it's somewhere deep down, it had to be, they were listening to what the market and what their clients really wanted and what women wanted for their daughters, and what parents wanted for their kids and what they wanted for themselves. And now look at this. So like people who had bad memories of Barbie in the past, now that they've changed their marketing message, the nostalgic memory of Barbie is better. It's amazing what they were able to do just by changing their marketing message, by thinking about their clients and what they need and want.
Well, I love that point you just made, because a psychology book I read recently talks about this, that you can actually reframe your memories to make them mean what you want them to mean. And I think that's what you've just said about what Mattel did, is because they've changed their messaging now to be what it is, and that it is about empowerment, and that that's what's important. People back in the 70s maybe who had their Barbie doll when the messaging was different associated with the messaging of today.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's it. It's till we just brought it up, I hadn't really thought about it, but it is.
But there is some dangers with it, in the sense that it comes to Ronan's wish, hope, fear, see framework for ideal client avatar, because if a lot of photographers ask their clients what they want, most are going to say, oh, I want the digitals for my Facebook, social media, or whatever.
Right.
But they're not asking the right questions and diving deep. You have to dive below the superficial level, or otherwise you're going to get that answer, and photographers are going to listen to this and say, what are these fucking crazy clients talking about? They don't know what they're talking about. My clients tell me they just want digitals. So it's not the stated desires. You have to find the hidden desires.
That's true. Meaning. Well, look, that's probably what Mattel did too. Stated desires, like, I just want a toy to keep my child busy.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not the true desire. It is deeper. It's deeper.
Yeah. And it's that hidden desire that's hidden away, that's much deeper. But as you say, John, you need to have the skills, and you need to have the ability to, well, first of all, you need the realization that is the case. And then you've got to learn the skills then to discover it, but you have to make the transition to say, well, there might be something in this. I'm at least willing to give it a go. Yeah,
you have to be open-minded about it. Mm-hmm. It's the worst case, and I know because I've been there. So to give you a story outside of it, I qualified as a tennis coach when I was like 18, and then a level 2 tennis coach when I was 21. And I was obsessed with studying technique. So similar thing to a photographer obsessed with the art and science of photographer studying, technical brilliance for creating a photograph. I was the same with tennis, and there was a coach in Spain who I trained with who was 180 in the world. Very good player. And I was so stubborn. I just had to do it my way. And I wasn't open-minded about making shifts in my technique or changing my game for years. And I kept failing. And then eventually when I started listening and just being open-minded, I said, right, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to put some belief in you. And I'm going to do what you say. And I'm going to try it. And if I fail, I fail. Because I'm failing anyway. So if it works, it works. And when I started making those shifts, he helped me win my first singles championship in my local club. But if I was stubborn, like Mum or you probably still say I'm stubborn, but if I had remained as stubborn, that never would have happened, because I would have been going along with my false beliefs and false stubbornness that it has to be this way or no way. So you have to be open-minded. I know, I've been there.
All right. So I think that's a great note to end this podcast on. Because that's really what we want people to do. We just want you just to consider it, and we hope just to be the top provocateurs that we are, and just help you just think about this. And if you do want to know more about this, just join the Fully Booked Photographer, join our AI marketing challenge, and learn how to place your client first, learn how to create a client avatar, first of all, discover the problem that you solve for them, what their hidden desires are, and just give it a go, give it a lash, as we say in Ireland. And if you stick with it, it will not only change your clients' lives, but it'll change your life. Tony Robbins talks about this all the time, in terms of, the best way to create the life that you absolutely love is to give and make a difference to other people. That's a summary of what he says. He doesn't say it exactly like that, but that's what this is about. Use what you're good at to make a difference to people, and the end results will look after themselves. Yes, you do need your business frameworks and your systems to make sure that they do invest, because if you make a difference to someone, you only want to charge them $1, they'll happy pay you just $1 for it. So you need all those other systems in place wrapped around it. But it starts with realizing that you've got to change your mentality about who this is about, what's the client problem, and how can you solve it with the art and science of photography. So on that note, We'll see you on the next podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to come out, check out the fullybookphotographer.com and sign up for AI Marketing Challenge. That's it from me. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.